beyondbelief.com to access exciting episodes of my online television show, Beyond Belief. In the meantime, feel free to check out our entire YouTube channel for free audio excerpts of Coast to Coast AM. David Paulides, of course, is the researcher, author, and investigator. He started all this with his book, Missing 411, which dealt with people disappearing in our public park systems. They merely vanished. David, welcome. I'm glad you're still here.
Thanks, George. It's great to be here.
What was it about this subject that got you first involved in investigating it?
Years ago, I was doing some peripheral research in a national park. Noticed a couple park rangers following me around, which isn't that unusual.
Yeah.
And went back to my location off the park site, and these guys showed up independently. And they said they knew of me, and they had been looking into missing people at the various parks that they had worked at.
Okay.
And they realized that on the front end, when somebody goes missing, there's a lot of activity, there's a lot of investigation. And then after about 7 or 8 days, everything stops. And when they tried to find out what happened to the victim and get more information, they were stymied, and they said something didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And then subsequent to the disappearance, the follow-up investigation by special agents of the Park Service really never happened.
In your opinion, David, how many people are missing just from the park systems alone?
Well, that's tough because they won't tell us.
And we don't know how far back to go, right? 1700s, 1800s?
Well, just in our research, I have cases going back, there's 9 countries that we've documented these incidents in.
All right.
That fit this profile.
Same profile.
And in those 9 countries, we have one case that goes all the way back to 1768 in France.
Huh. If you had to guess, though, speculate on how many total people we're talking about disappearing.
So we've documented right now in our books about 1,100.
1,100 people. Now, you highlighted in the film a lot of missing children cases. Tell me about that, why you highlighted on that.
So we could have gone many gamuts with this. We could have
Right.
done it about hunters, hikers, adults, females. We chose to do children for one reason. If I sit down with you and I said, well, a person disappeared at point A and he was found 5 miles away and 2,000 feet uphill. Well, somebody like you and I, not a big deal. But a 2-year-old child? I don't think so. And it's for that reason we focused on children. They really can't go that far in the wilderness. And when they set up their parameters to search, they're usually searching within those parameters where 95% of the kids are found.
Yeah.
And in those incidents, just go back to the Crater Lake incident, they kept going further and further and further out. They bring canines in. The canines can't bring up a scent. All of a sudden the weather changes. They bring in professional trackers. None of these people can find a little child.
What is going on?
Well, that's why I'm here. I hope you were going to tell me, George. You have access to so many different people that I thought someone in this world would come in and say, this is the answer.
Well, I come from the school of, look at something natural first, murders, disappearances, accidents. But once that's all weighed off, and you say that's most of them are weighed off, then you come to the very unusual, the strange, the mystical. And is there anything in your research, David, that showed you about folklore? I know you talked about a case in the 1700s, but about folklore about this happening. Did Native Americans talk about stuff like this or anything like that, do you know?
Great idea and a great topic. In one of the books I wrote about Iceland, and they have folklore of people or fairies living in boulders. And do you know in Iceland, they won't move a boulder to make a road. They'll put the road around the boulder.
They don't want to disturb their habitat.
That's right. And I thought, wow, that's interesting because I've written about boulders having the association of missing people and boulder fields. And then in my latest book that we're talking about today, I talk about granite. Well, there's a giant mound of granite in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a story from the late 1800s about a priest being chased. And the priest said that he ran on top of this giant piece of solid and it engulfed him and took him. And he said he walked around inside this for days and then it spit him out.
Whoa.
I thought, wow, Priests don't usually fabricate.
No.
So
Or hallucinate?
Yeah. So what happened there? But I thought the association of the granite, it's swallowing him and then spitting him out days later. Strange.
How much do we not know about this planet and this universe?
We know far less than what we think we know. There's so much about the world and just the people I've talked to in the last 7 years and the access. I mean, it's a constant eye-opening experience to me. So McGrogan was an ER doctor, emergency room doctor, and super sharp guy.
Yeah.
Marathon runner. He went with some other physicians, and they were right up here, up Highway 70, right across from Vail Resort. And there's a very well-marked trail that goes up to this ice hut where they were going to spend the night. And McGrogan, being in excellent shape, his group stopped, and he says, hey, I'm not tired. I'm going to just keep going.
Keep going, yeah.
So he keeps going, and they go to their next stop. He's not there. And they think, well, maybe he just kept going. So they went up. Eventually, they reached the hut. He's not there. And they're concerned. This guy did everything right, George. He had backup batteries. He had backup systems.
Mm-hmm.
He had avalanche detection. He had everything that I would have had if I was...
Maybe a weapon?
I don't think
Who knows?
I don't think he did. But,
Yeah.
you know, what predators are out in the middle of winter in Colorado
Yeah.
on this? There's nothing. There's the bears are hibernating, the mountain lions, you would find the scene. Long story short, he disappears. Giant search. Giant search. They bring in helicopters. They bring in planes. They bring in searchers. So you got to remember, he's on a snow trail.
So do they find some of that trail he's on?
Here's the scenario. If you're on that trail, and if you deviated off the trail, there would be marks.
There'd be marks of your snowboard.
Right. Well, they followed every mark, and every mark turned around and came back. Now, the location where McGrogan was on this trail, and the location he was eventually found, 6 miles to the east, there's nothing but giant hills and rolling snow. So if he would have traveled from point A to point B, it would have looked like a giant snowplow
You'd
going
see
through
it.
that mountain, and helicopters and everyone would have seen him.
Yeah.
But the more amazing thing is, anywhere along that point, you could see Vail Resort, you could get out your cell phone, you could call for help.
Bizarre.
No marks, no call. So they decided to search all the way to this one valley 6 miles
Mhm.
away. And they went up the valley, didn't find anything.
Nothing.
They call off the search. Within a day later, some other people were up this valley, and they find his body at the bottom. Snow skis are still on his back. He's wearing a helmet. His helmet is caved in, and he died from blunt force trauma to the head. Now, that's all that the story tells you, and that's all the public knows from the public description of the news accounts. So I thought, this isn't right. So I request from Eagle County a copy of the coroner's report and the search and rescue report. I thought, wow, this is strange. How come the news never said that he's found not wearing boots?
Yeah. Why would he take his boots off? That makes no sense. When you got into this, there must have been 1 or 2 case studies that first cropped up that got you to say, hey, there's something weird here. I'm going to study this. How'd that happen for you?
Well, originally, I got a notification from a national park ranger that he had worked at a series of national parks, and they had an unusual amount of disappearances, and the people had disappeared in unusual places that really didn't make a lot of sense to this person. And over the years, they tried to do a little research and figure out what happened, and they got stymied. And the more they looked into it, into their internal system, he got concerned that there wasn't enough being done. And eventually ended up contacting me when I was at a park doing some peripheral research. And we started to look into disappearances in the U.S. National Park system. Probably the first case that brought my interest was a case of Stacy Eros that disappeared in Yosemite.
Yeah.
A 14-year-old girl that was on a pack train ride into Sunrise Lakes, into the High Sierra area of Yosemite. Her and her dad stopped at a series of cabins. She got off her horse, freshened up, and her and a 70-year-old man named Stuart went and took a short walk off to this bluff, and she brought her camera, and they were going to just take pictures. The trail hands saw them walk over there, and she walked away from Stuart and told Stuart she was going to walk down to a lake to take some pictures. And the trail hand and Stewart saw her walk down there, and that was the last time she was ever seen. Subsequent search found the lens cap to her camera right inside the tree line of that area. But the reality is they never found a trace of her after that. I filed a series of Freedom of Information Act requests against the Park Service to get documents. And I have received documents before from the Park Service on other missing persons cases. I got a call from their attorney asking me why I wanted the case. And then they asked me what I was going to do with it. And finally, a special agent from the Park Service, a guy named Yu, told me I would never get that case.
Are these cases, David, all around the country or primarily in North America?
Originally, we focused on just the United States. And slowly, as the word got out what we were doing, we started to get contacted from people from around the world. And initially, it came out of Canada that there were these additional cases. And then the Canadian National Park System seems to fall into the same category as the U.S. National Park System as far as the number of disappearances. To date in North America, we've established 52 clusters of missing people in national parks and national forests throughout North America.
Wow.
The biggest cluster in the world of missing people, Yosemite National Park.
Are these disappearances also happening in cities where you don't have parks?
So to this point, we established a profile that is based upon hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of disappearances and thousands of reports that we've read about missing people. So this profiling, it's a specific point we're looking for. Namely, canines that are brought in can't find a scent. They disappear and there's nothing heard. There's nothing seen. There's no abduction scenario.
Footprints, nothing.
Nothing. The people a lot of times are walking with friends or parents and they're either first in line or they're last in line when they disappear. And those people don't hear or see anything either.
You turn around and they're gone.
Exactly. One of the specific scenarios that we get asked is that, well, maybe it's an animal attack. So in the search and rescue reports, they bring in trackers, they bring professional people in. In each one of those cases, it's completely absolved that there isn't an animal attack. But one thing that people do say is that in conjunction with these disappearances, immediately after or right after, part of that profile is that there's bad weather associated with this, meaning in many of these cases, sometimes it rains inches and inches or snows feet and feet in days right afterwards.
Kind of wipes out the scene, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And so aliens, alien abduction, that's a really common one. Another one that I've heard a lot from Europe and Iceland is fairies.
Fairies.
Fairies and little people. And I've actually written about that in some of my books because the folklore and mythology that surrounds it talks about them abducting people.
Yes, that's right.
So
ancient folklore.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then another one is that there's gods. And the gods at times take people for their own will. And part of that taking of them is that if they don't fit the eventual needs of those gods, they're replaced back on earth. And those are the ones we find deceased. I've heard that probably 200 times. The other one that, you know, a lot of people may think is true is that there's a group of serial killers out there in the woods.
Correct.
To me, that is the least likely of every scenario. Not that I'm categorizing anything, but the reason being is that in these searches, they bring in professional trackers. Part of that professional tracking ability is tracking somebody through the woods. And some of the people they use are Navajo trackers, military trackers, professional private trackers in conjunction with canines.
And nothing.
Nothing. They don't find tracks leaving the scene. They don't find a scent. Some idea, or the idea that people promote that it's a serial killer in the woods, there's a lot of things that go with that. And mainly, if there was a serial killer in the woods, then they'd have to carry that body for miles.
When they track, do they get to a certain point and it just ends?
Sometimes it ends immediately, and sometimes they do get to that point and the scent just stops. A lot of times, some of the best canine trackers in the world have said that they'll bring the dog to the scene, and the dog will walk in a circle, lay down, and doesn't want to track.
He's scared.
Well, the description from some of the searchers is that they can't tell if the dog is uninterested or there is no search.
Yeah.
So
What about Bigfoot?
that's another scenario that's been brought up hundreds and hundreds of times, and I would say that the issue with that one is the same with the others in that there's no tracks.
Right.
And if you were going to carry somebody, drag somebody, I think you would hear something on the front end
You would think.
of something unusual.
What about a portal, another dimension, some kind of, God knows what is going on in this planet, this universe, and that these people just accidentally walk right through it and they're gone and they can't get back?
Well, in all of the scenarios, in what's been explained to me by other experts that have been on your show, to me, that one, if it exists, would be the one that fit every scenario that we've explained in the book. Not that I'm saying that is it. I'm just saying that the scenario the experts lay out seems to be the one that fits the most criteria. As an example, there was a hunter in Colorado that contacted me a couple years ago, and he was hunting for elk at about 10 or 11,000 feet up in northern Colorado. And he said he was walking on a plain where the grass was maybe 4 feet high, 3 or 4 feet, and he heard something coming towards him, and he couldn't really identify it. And he kept walking. He got on a trail, and he kept hearing a loud hum. And he started to slow down on the trail, and he said in front of him it became real blurry.
Whoa.
So he slowed down even more.
Like an opening.
Something, he says it was almost like you were looking through glasses that weren't yours, and it was just strange looking. And he said he almost walked up to it, and it looked like a plate of glass, and he stuck his foot through, and part of his foot disappeared. And he said, I brought my foot back, and I turned around, and I ran. That's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
But I suppose what would happen to you if you had your head down, you weren't paying attention? I don't know.
That's a good point. Lindsay Page, Eloise Lindsay Page.
That is one of the more unusual stories along the Appalachian Trail in South Carolina. She was in Table Rock State Park. And I've written a lot about the Appalachian Trail. There's a lot of really unusual things that have happened there and a lot of strange disappearances all along there. She was an older lady. I think she was in her early 20s, going to do a hike of 43 miles. And she was well prepared, lots of experience. She was going to get picked up, I think, 7 to 8 days after her drop-off point. Well, she wasn't there for the pickup point. Her story is that about 3 days into it, there were a series of men that were following her and harassing her on the trail. Now, when you just take it at that point, hey, maybe it's happened.
Maybe.
This went on for days. And eventually, 14, 18 days, a hunter finds her cowering in the woods.
Cowering. She's alive.
Alive. They bring her out, and she tells this story that these men followed her, harassed her. She dumped her backpack. She got rid of everything. And then she was eventually went to the hospital. The interesting part of the story to me isn't what she said, because she never explained exactly what she saw. But when her mom was interviewed, her mom said, I'm not sure what really happened to my daughter in the woods, and I don't really know for sure what my daughter saw in the woods.
Huh. Like she was not accepting the story of the men?
Or her daughter obviously wasn't comfortable in telling the whole story. But that scenario of the men along the Appalachian Trail, there's been many disappearances there over the years where people are just never found. There's a woman named Geraldine Largay that was in Maine that was walking the entire Appalachian Trail, and every day or every 2 days her husband would resupply her. She was 66 years old, I think, maybe a little older. Phenomenal shape. She'd call her husband all the time. One day didn't call. Massive search. Maine Warden Service threw everything at that search, and even the wardens said they couldn't believe they didn't find anything of her. Still never been found. That was a real troubling one. The other real troubling one occurred in the 60s. Dennis Martin, Him, his dad, his grandpa.
Little kid again?
Yeah, 6 years old.
Yeah.
And
Something about little kids.
little kids. And they were on Spence Field in Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And there's a lot of strange parts to this story. And as they were camped in this area, a family walks up to them and introduces themselves and says, hey, can our kids play together? He says, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And he reaches out and shakes Mr. Martin's hand and go, our names are the Martins too.
Huh.
Now that's pretty, what would be the odds?
Odds are high.
Okay.
Got a kid, your name's Martin. It's like a doppelganger or something. You know?
Yeah. And so Mr. Martin says that he sees Dennis, they start playing hide and seek, sees Dennis go behind a tree just a few feet off the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
They play hide and seek for 50 seconds. Nothing, everyone's supposed to come out, Dennis doesn't come out. And Mr. Martin said, I knew, Dave, something was wrong. I ran right to the tree, Dennis wasn't there. Well, Mr. Martin was a long distance runner. He ran for 2 miles nonstop down the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
Just straight down the trail, because he figured that's the only place.
That's the only way you're going to go, right?
Right. So comes back, his dad runs down, gets rangers. This is one of those scenarios where it started at about 4:30 that afternoon and started to rain. Rained nonstop for 2 weeks. Now during that 2-week period, the Park Service threw everything at it. They not only threw everything they could at it, but they also called in the Green Berets, reportedly.
Wow, that's heavy hitting.
I get a case file, it's about 2 inches thick on this incident from the Park Service.
Yeah.
One of the times they complied. And in that report, it never says anywhere in any of those reports who called the Park Service, or who. Now, Dwight McCarter was the head tracker for the Park Service when he retired in that region. And I asked Dwight, I said, so Dwight, who called him? He says, I don't know, Dave. And I said, so was there anything unusual? Oh, yeah. He says, when the Green Berets came in, they set up a camp away from everybody else. They set up their own communication system. They supposedly had never been in the park. Mm-hmm. And they said the Park Service offered to partner a few of them with one of theirs because they knew the park.
Sure.
Green Berets said, no, we'll work alone.
They'll do it alone.
And Dwight said that they never talked to him. They never dealt with him. They were there a week. They flew in helicopters, left in helicopters. No one ever took responsibility of who called him.
Wow.
Now, as this is going on, there's a family that enters the park, and their last name is the Key family, K-E-Y. Now, what's interesting about that is that this is what I think the key to the case. They ask a ranger where they could go to see bear. The ranger sends them to this area called Rowan's Creek in the park. It's about 2 or 3 miles from Spence Meadows, where the Martin family was at, and it's downhill. They go into the Rowan's Creek area, they walk in on this rural trail, and they kind of get split up a little bit, and a dad and his sons are ahead. And as they're walking up, they hear this, in their words, sickening loud scream.
Finally, we hear a sound from something.
Correct. Now, this is hours after Dennis disappeared, but they didn't know anything happened.
Yeah.
And their 12-year-old boy looks up on the hill, and he says, Dad, look at that. A bear is running around on the hill. Mr. Key looks up on the hill and says, son, that's not a bear, that's a man. And he says, really? And they didn't get a good view of it because it kept hiding behind trees. So they watch it for a little bit. They never see a bear, so they ended up going back. They didn't know anything happened that day. They leave, they go home, and the next day in the Knoxville Times, headlines is this boy disappears.
Missing boy. Yeah.
They think they should contact the park. They do. And by this time, an FBI agent is on scene monitoring the search, but not participating according to them. He's monitoring. So the FBI and an investigator from the Park Service take the call. The Key family says, hey, we'll come to the park and show you exactly where we were at when we saw it. Which, as a former investigator, that's exactly what I'd want.
Right.
I want to see their perspective.
Right.
Well, what happened is that they told him, don't come to the park, we'll meet you. Well, Mr. Martin had an agreement with all the investigators that anything they heard, he would immediately know. He was never told about this for weeks later, until a reporter from the Knoxville Times came to him and said, do you know about this?
Huh.
He said he blew his lid.
He should have.
But the FBI told the Key family, hey, it's impossible, it's not related. He told the FBI agent, told the press, it's not related, don't worry about it. Well, the press didn't believe it. So they go to Dwight McCarter, the tracker. And since the FBI agent said, it's impossible, the timing doesn't work, McCarter told Mr. Martin, let's make the walk together. Let's see how far we could go. McCarter proved it could happen. The timing could work.
Yeah.
Well, myself and another investigator went to Knoxville, went right to Mr. Martin's house, knocked on the door, and met the man. And this was about 4 years ago. And I explained who I was, and I explained, Mr. Martin, there's probably nobody else you know of that knows as much about your son's disappearance as you and me.
Yep.
And I just want to ask a little bit of your time. And I could see his wife in the next room, and he said, Dave, we spent a lifetime trying to get this behind us. I agreed I wouldn't talk to anybody else about it because it's caused me nothing but grief. I said, give me 15 minutes, please. I came all the way from California for this. He says, okay. He steps outside. George, in all my career, I don't know if I've had a tougher conversation with anybody. He said that there's so much about the story that the press won't talk about. And he said, Dave, thank you for taking the time to understand, but I can't tell you how much I'm disturbed by the Park Service and the newspaper and the press not telling the truth and trying to hide the truth from me. And he said the part about the Key family. And I said, yeah. And he says, do you know what they never would put in the paper and they would never put in a report? And I said, what's that? You know what they saw on the hill? I said, yeah. It was carrying something on its shoulder. He said, I talked to the Key family. The newspapers wouldn't put that in the newspaper. And he goes, did you find that in any Park Service report? I said, there was nothing about it.
It was the little boy on the shoulders of whatever that was.
Well, and in that, there's nothing in that 2 inches of document about the Key family observation.
That's amazing.
And I asked him, what else is there I should know about this case? This is after 15, 20 minutes. And Mr. Martin said, well, do you know that FBI agent that was on the scene? I said, yeah, he was on the scene for all the disappearances in Smoky Mountain National Park and the other 9 disappearances I documented in the area. He was that agent. He goes, you know what happened to him? I said, no. He says, he committed suicide.
Oh my God.
And about a month later, we confirmed he committed suicide.
What an unbelievable story. David, you keep doing what you're doing, all right? Because somebody's got to watch this story. Thank you so much for being on Beyond Belief.
George. Thank you.
These stories are probably the scariest I have ever heard in my 46 years of broadcasting, uncovered by a man who will not give up until he gets these answers. David Paulides. I'm George Norrie, and this is Beyond Belief. Hi, I'm George Norrie, and welcome to the Coast to Coast AM YouTube channel. Please enjoy this free preview, and make sure to subscribe to BeyondBelief.com to access exciting episodes of my online television show, Beyond Belief. In the meantime, feel free to check out our entire YouTube channel for free audio excerpts of Coast to Coast AM. Welcome to Coast AM's YouTube channel. I'm George Norrie. Like, share, and subscribe. Also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and coasttocoastam.com. Become a Coast Insider for ad-free access to thousands of shows you'll really enjoy.
Broadcasting from the confines of an abandoned radio station in the secluded apartment building closet of high strangeness. Yep, from the foothills of the Colorado Rockies. It's time for full disclosure of the topics they told us were off limits. Connie Willis here. This is Coast to Coast AM. Tonight, twin psychics, abnormal, common. More info on that coming up, and open lines as well. Time now to turn off the lights and join me for another interesting evening of conversation, much needed education, and the chance that we might get a little closer to the truth of what lurks amongst us and what is beyond. I'm Connie Willis, and this is Coast to Coast AM. You're listening to Coast AM. Hello, I'm Connie Willis. How are you doing? Please catch me on my show at ConnieWillis.com. You can find out where's Willis, ConnieWillis.com. Tonight, we've got some fun tonight, right? Open lines coming up later. Looking forward to that. Hope that some of you have some spooky stories or something interesting, something we've never heard about before, ever. Some encounter we've never heard about before. If that sounds like you, I want to hear from you tonight on Open Lines. Coming up, though, as our guest tonight, we've got two together. That's kind of rare to do. Two together that even look exactly alike and have a whole lot of things in common. They are the Kinsella twins. They are psychic, and they've had a lot of interesting things happen. It's Philip and Ronnie. They're both clairvoyant mediums, UFO investigators, and authors. Philip has had many bizarre UFO paranormal experiences throughout his life, along with his, like I said, identical twin brother, Ronald or Ronnie. He began to research the phenomenon. This is Philip on a serious level investigations after an alien abduction in 1989. It led him to writing several books. His brother, I mean, they just have to kind of be a part of the same thing along the way, and they have. They're going to be talking about that tonight. They have an incredible history behind them, and both of them together co-host a radio program for the Paranormal UK radio called Twin Souls. So I'm sure you've heard of them before. I know they are huge, and so here they are for the first time here on Coast to Coast. They've interviewed many people along the way, other authors and other experiencers and investigators on all topics of the bizarre. And in fact, one of their UFO experiences that they've had themselves has been caught on camera. And we're going to ask them about that too. So now they get to make their debut first time on Coast to Coast. So Kinsella twins, welcome to Coast AM, Philip and Ronnie.
Hello, Connie. This is Philip. Delighted to be on your program. Thank you very much. Hello, Connie. This is Ronnie. Delighted.
I'm so glad that you guys know to do that and will be doing that all night. I appreciate it. These are two of the nicest people you'll ever meet, first of all, not just talented with their abilities and not just, full of great stories, encounters, things like that, and a great deal of knowledge, but just super guy. Now, so I got to ask something, and this is probably the most important question of all. Are you twin abductees, twin contactees, or twin experiencers?
Well, this is Philip. I would say really that we were twin abductees, and we recall one each. Ronnie's was in 1982, and mine had been in 1989, what I recall of the events very clearly. So that's, I think, how you would label us. Okay,
because you know the difference, right?
Yes, we do indeed know the difference.
Okay.
There may have been some other experiences, but as I said, we deal with facts and as they come about. So if we have no memory of that, we can't talk about
Right.
that.
I gotcha. I like that. And that's what I respect about you guys. Absolutely. So is there anything else you want to tell about yourself before we get into some of your great stories? Because I want to make sure, you have quite a background, both of you.
Yeah, this is Philip again. It wasn't intentional in any way or form. It wasn't like I wanted to go into the UFO subject or the subject of the paranormal. But with myself and my brother, it was almost, trying to find out the truth of what was going on. And we wanted to find out whether or not, first of all, as strange as it may seem, that we were lying or the system that we serve was lying. And I bet you can, work out who we thought was lying. Ronnie. Yeah, this is Ronnie. I'm also an artist. And it strangely boded well with what happened when we were brave enough to come out with it, because adopting it, the art, I'm able to portray these creatures that people have allegedly seen or experienced. So that has helped me enormously, especially with the promotion, with the greys and the reptilians and things like that. I love it. I love the art as well. So I'm quite artistic.
You are. I've seen your art. If you guys go to their website, oh my goodness. That's amazing, amazing art. I know you've done that with the computer. I don't know how that works, but the people I know that do it that way are usually extremely intelligent, but I've heard it takes a while to be able to master that skill as well. Is that correct?
That's right. It took me 7 years because I worked in
Oh,
traditional paints, and this may make you laugh. We're both colorblind, partially colorblind. So with the technology that we now use to create these images or these aliens and spaceships and things, is that it has a set color wheel, which is good for me because once when I painted in a traditional sense, I painted a green horse and thought it was brown.
oh, okay. Well, I won't ask you any colors, how to describe anything, just the shapes. Okay, we'll go that way. You can find his art and everything else that they have at the kinsellatwins.com. Can you, well, you did mention a second ago, you said when we were brave enough to come out with it. When were you brave enough to come out with all this?
This is Philip. I mean, it was in the late 2000s, after I had my initial abduction in the winter of 1989. I thought I was going mad, and the phenomena itself occurred on a principle that was partly physical and partly non-physical. And this is something that I wanted to look into, and it had been with what we call the Greys. And interestingly, I wanted to find out how I was able to go through solid matter. And this is what led me into a further avenue of research and also dealing with certain theoretical models of what we may be dealing with. But I joined a group, a local UFO group, some years later. And I didn't realize there were groups out there. And, a lot of the descriptions that people were talking about were similar to mine. But I always thought the experience happened on a physical level of integration. And so this is how I wanted to go forward with the research and to really truly establish what we are dealing with. And Ronnie will explain how he felt strong enough to come forward with his experience. Yes, this is Ronnie. I think I came out with mine just before 2010. It's when I had seen one of these triangular ships, and that did it for me. I thought I have to get this down into a book form. So in 2010, I began writing this book, and then it was published in 2012. That was ironically called Twin Souls by Capelban. It's out of print now, but that's when I initially came out with this, because after seeing them, when you just have had enough, you think, you've got to tell the people. And when in doing so, I found that this was very common, that we weren't, thankfully, the only ones. There are hundreds of thousands of people, fortunately, that have seen these. And I say fortunately because it makes you feel a bit closer to home and not an outcast.
Yeah, I agree. So the 1989 abduction that you guys are talking about, let's go to that. Can you tell us about that encounter?
Yes, Connie, I can. This is Philip. Although Ronnie's experience happened some years before in 1982, but the 1989 event, I had come home from work. We lived in a small village called Marston Moor Tane, which is 5 miles outside of Bedfordshire, and I used to commute by train. I mean, I drive, but I used to commute by train. And on this particular night, I walked into the house. There was me, my brother, my sister, and our dog. We had a dog called Benji. And bearing in mind the house was mostly glass to the front of the house, and the doors to the kitchen were glass as well. And there's a reason why I have to state the glass.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I walked into the kitchen and I laid back against the sideboard, so I had a full view of the hall and the glass, and the dog was laying in front of me. And we were just talking about general chit-chat. This was roughly it would have been about 7:15 at night, and it was dark. We had the lights on, obviously. And then the atmosphere began to change within the area that we were in. And my brother was standing in front of me, but away from the hall, because he was in the kitchen diner area. And all of a sudden, my brother went into some kind of trance. It sounds crazy, but this is exactly what happened. He froze, and then he lifted his head up towards the ceiling, and he said, "There's going to be an earthquake or Grandma's going to die." Now, there was no earthquake, and our grandmother was still very much alive. And immediately as he said that, my attention was drawn through to the hall, through the glass doors to the hall, and there was this light that came up very quickly, and it was a white light. I mean, I'm colorblind, but I get mixed up with browns and greens. But it was this white light that came up very quickly and started to flood the glass in the front of the door. And at this point, the dog started to go mad and barking profusely. And the only way I can describe it was that the glass was moving backwards and forwards as though it was becoming pliable, almost like one of those cartoon scenes of something bending. And then immediately I saw this very small being. It was about 3 foot high. It was very thin. It wore what I thought was a helmet on its head, but it was all clad in black, complete black. And as it came through the glass, the light dispersed, and then it ran through. My brother and I had a downstairs study/bedroom, and it on the ground floor, and it shot in there, and I had become paralyzed with fear. My brother snapped out of his trance. The dog was going absolutely crazy, and I reached behind me to get a knife from a drawer, and I said, "There's an intruder in the house," and then I yelled, "There's an intruder in the house," and we couldn't find this intruder. That was the first part to the experience. In the early hours of that morning, I awoke to find myself on my back, floating 3 feet off the floor in the same position in the hall of where this being came from. And shocked, I awoke and couldn't move, although I was fully conscious. And I felt myself being dragged through the house by some invisible force and being drawn through the glass. And I kept thinking, well, how am I able to pass through doors? Going through the kitchen door and then being dragged very slowly through to the conservatory glass doors out the back, because we had quite a big garden. And I kept thinking, what has a hold of me? I need to break this. I can't get out of this. Now, most people will assume this is sleep paralysis, but this was anything but. If I can explain that on this level of conscious awareness, I was in full control, but I could not move. So my thoughts weren't being, in any way adjusted. I thought how fascinating it was to go through glass, but I went with the experience. And as I came out through the conservatory glass doors, my mind's thinking, how am I able to pass through solid matter? This is not possible. How can this happen? And immediately, when I was outside, 3 foot on my back, I was arched round, and I could see in the sky hundreds of UFOs just moving very quickly through the sky. And I'm thinking, my goodness, they're real. They are real. But there was one object that wasn't moving, and it was a circular, disc-shaped object that seemed to be a silver dark grey, and it wasn't moving. It was just stationary in the sky. It seemed quite large. And as soon as I focused upon it, I felt myself being lifted up. You know that feeling you get when you're on a roller coaster and you take that dip down? But I was
upsy daisy, we call that.
Yeah.
An upsy daisy.
Yeah. And I was being drawn, then pulled towards this object very fast, and then I blacked out. And it is the next part of the experience. There's 2 more parts that were very disturbing. And I must have blacked out, and the next thing I recall was that I found myself in some kind of medical environment. It was a bit dingy, it was very hot, and I found myself naked. And this is where I suffered within the media channels for being honest and open and telling the truth, because the media, as we know, take a different stance to the subject matter. When I found myself in this room, I was on a bed, and I was strapped to the bed, but I was naked. And when I turned to my right, there were what I can only describe as ridiculous as it sounds, was 3 reptilians that didn't communicate, but they were in this kind of thicker mist, and they were moving backwards and forwards in this strange gait. And I was absolutely horrified, even more so when I found that there seemed to be some kind of foreign implement that had been placed in the lower part of my region, if I can say that. And this horror came into a new area, a new dimension of reality. I was absolutely petrified, and I started to scream and yell. I wanted them to take it out of me, but these beings, whatever they were, they had no compassion, no love, no sense of empathy at all. I just wanted this thing out of me because it felt organic within the lower part of my anatomy. And eventually I saw this, what I can only describe was a small grey coming forward from this corridor that was ahead of me or round the corner. And as it appeared, the device that was inside me was slowly retracted and the straps came off. And I noticed that the 3 reptilians, or what I assumed were reptilians, had gone. They just disappeared. And this grey ordered me to dress, and I was thankful, into my night clothes, and I was to follow it through this corridor. The communication was achieved through some kind of thought transference, although people say, what does that sound like? But the only way I can describe it is it's like just a knowing and being told in your head. So I had to follow it. And I followed it to what I thought was a wall, and the wall turned into a door that opened, and the Grey's just looking at me saying, get out, we want you out. And I'm like, I can see the village from a great height. It's now going into the early hours of the morning, and I can see outside another smaller craft that's hovering by the conservatory, because we're quite way up where we are. And I'm thinking, this is incredible. I just want to get home. And I feel violated. I was annoyed and angry. And then I found myself being pushed out. I don't know what pushed me out. There was a force that pushed me out of this hatch or this door. And as I came down to the ground, there were 2 other Greys on either side of me, where I floated, thinking, oh my goodness, I can fly. It's incredible that I can float and fly. This feeling was going through my head. But at the same token, not being able to look at the 2 Greys beside me on either side. And I thought that was very strange, because I'd seen the one up there. And as I came down to the ground, this was the last part of the experience. These 2 Greys beside me had taken off, and in front of me was another Grey. And he was standing underneath this small object that I'd seen from aboard the ship. And his arms were folded across his chest. He looked more humanized, if I can say that, still having the pronounced features of his face, large eyes. He was in a one-piece uniform. He wore knee-high boots, and he was looking at me real mad, real mad. And I felt that. I felt like I'd been punched inside. And as I looked at him, there was some kind of familiarity. I can't remember from where or what period within my life, but he seemed familiar. And I'm like, you're angry with me? I want to punch you. I've just been, had the most incredible experience and traumatic experience, and you're looking at me mad. So I thought, I need to ask you a question. I need to ask him a question. I said to him, how on earth am I able to get through solid matter? I thought that if he could tell me, I'd have the secret to this and people would understand what happened. Well, no sooner had I said that when he looked confused, and he opened his mouth in slow motion. He raised his head to the underneath of his craft, and the only way I can explain it was he
And my mom really said, are you getting a boy to or a doctor? I thought, why you want me to give the doctor? Because they give him money. Nigga, I don't care. I don't want no money. And then he got mad. Baby. You like your new toy? Yeah? Want to connect it? Come on, baby. Grab it.
Hey guys. Yeah. Just that bad, dude.
Get yourself sorted. We'll be deploying shortly. Enemy soldier incoming. Tango down. Enemy soldier incoming. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies. Enough practice. Time for the real thing.
These guys are weird as fuck. I hit it, I hit it, I hit it, I hit it, I hit it first. Yeah, fuck with that Ray J?
We're holding for deployment. Now's a good time to warm up. dropping into the AO.
I hit it, I hit it, I hit it, I hit it. I like Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. Still don't know who that is? What about Rick and Morty?
I'm your pilot.
You sound like the type of dude to put hot dogs in his spaghetti. I ain't like that.
Enemy
So
dropping
you
into the
guys sound
AO.
like the type of dudes who put spaghetti
You're done
or
warming
hot
up.
dogs in their
Stand
spaghetti.
by for deployment to the war zone.
You said you put hot dogs in your potato salad? Shut your bitch ass crybaby ass up, bruh. You acting like you're really in a fucking Marine, like you're really about to drop an alcohol.
Bounty contact moving. Battle Royale. Alright, soldier. Mark a drop point for your
I got her
team.
back out, bro. That's all I gotta say.
Gas is approaching your position. Move to the safe zone.
What I say, man? Frag got her back out.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
I hit it, I
Alright,
hit it, I
let's
hit it, yeah, yeah. My work on the rapper. I can be annoying and still frag out.
You're being tracked by an enemy team.
Need
Stay
recon
sharp.
on my position.
UAV
I
entering
hit
the
it,
AO.
I hit it, I hit it, I hit it first.
Enemy precision airstrike. Take cover. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
Be advised, UAV is bingo fuel. RTB for
You've got a loadout drop inbound. Enemy UAV overhead.
Say it ain't so, I would not go. Turn the lights off, carry me home. It's like Blink 182.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Gotta dig deep.
Gas is inbound.
Lighting me out right here.
I wanna turn the lights out, carry me home. I'm gonna die, 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 die. Found it. Yeah, better.
25 remaining, nicely done. Lost that one, but we'll come back stronger next time.
Hey, beautifuls.
I throw the bottle track.
Huh?
I throw her track. Her bottle.
Smoking doinks and Amish.
Get yourself sorted. We'll be deploying shortly. Enemy dropping into the AR. Receiving hostile fire. Enemy soldier incoming.
Taking fire over here!
Enough practice. Time for the real thing. Battle Royale. Set a drop point for your team, soldier. Gas is closing on your position. Suggest you get moving.
Marking waypoint forward.
All right, lads, let's get it done. Being tracked by an enemy team. Stay sharp.
Yes. Come to daddy's. Hey, somebody's dropping on top, bro.
Enemy soldier incoming. Enemy UAV overhead.
Yeah, the fuck right.
Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
Targets!
Target appears hostile.
You've got gas moving in. Bounty target has been marked. Kill him.
Contact! That's on!
Enemy UAV overhead.
Hey, on you green. On you green.
That's on!
Got a loadout drop inbound.
Movement!
Throwing frag.
Only 25 left. Pick up the attack.
Taking fire over here!
I did right.
Taking fire! Target down!
Frag out.
Holy shit!
Gas is closing in. Relocating the safe zone. Trophy system deployed.
Go win a one-on-one, you camping bitch.
Taking shots!
There. This team's job.
Frag out!
Need medical attention.
Tagged it back.
You are one of 25 remaining. Learn from the loss. Failure's a proper teacher. Get yourself sorted. We'll be deploying shortly. Enemy dropping into the AO. Enough practice. Time for the real thing. Battle Royale. Mark a drop point for your team. You'll lead them in.
Does anyone need this?
Be advised, gas is closing in. Proceed to the safe zone. Eliminate all targets in the AO. Be advised, there's an enemy team hunting you.
Moving.
Friendly sentry gun online.
Moving out.
Got a loadout drop inbound. You're losing ground.
I'm moving. Disregard last. I see movement.
One I knocked down, he was already
Target down.
He might have had a UAV, I didn't hear it.
Loadout drop inbound.
Trophy system deployed.
101, bitch.
Your team is KIA. It's up to you now. Gas inbound. Safe zone relocated. Only 25 remain. Enemy UAV overhead.
They're looking for me right here.
Movement!
Damn, bro.
Enemy cluster strike incoming. Take cover.
Good shit.
Gas
That's it. Shake it off. Target down.
50 meters out to the right, they should be in headquarters. 40 open.
Moving out.
There's one over here by 5.
Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
Super shots down. Stay asleep too. On me. Oh, that was you, Green.
Enemy cluster strike incoming. Take cover.
Does anyone need this?
15 meters out, straight down this way.
Gas is closing in. Relocating the safe zone. Enemy UAV overhead. Fire sale is active. Buy station costs are adjusted.
Oh, they're above watching.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Moving position.
Hostile dropping
Moving
into
position.
the area.
One's
What?
rising.
Enemy UAV overhead. Enemy precision airstrike. Take cover. Enemy UAV overhead. Enemy UAV overhead. Fire cell done. Prices are back to normal. Enemy UAV overhead.
It's not bad, going at one-on-one.
Get yourself sorted. We'll be deployed shortly. Enemy dropping into the AO.
Contact!
What you need, little dude? Nah, I have
into the
TKTOK in my
AR.
name because I'm hacking. For me right now. Report me right now.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
I'm hit! I'm hit!
Enemy soldier incoming. Alright, that's enough fucking about. Now we do this for real. Enemy soldier incoming.
I don't need hacks, bro. I'm just hacking. Yes, sir. I do stream, Daddy.
Battle Royale.
Well,
Mark a drop point for your team. You'll lead them in.
Drop
Gas is
zone
closing
marked.
on your
Get
position.
ready.
Suggest you get moving.
Oh yeah, the game was. Tundra and the AX-50 are my favorite look. I actually picked them
Your
M82
primary
right now.
objective is to kill them all. Enemy soldier incoming.
Okay.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Bit of body armor here, sniper rifle.
Good one, bitch.
Those bastards have me sighted.
Mover here. Tally 1, indicating waypoint.
No.
Bit of body armor
Be
here.
advised, enemy team is tracking your location.
I'll fly, come on.
Knowledge waypoint cord.
Forget about that one.
Hell yes.
I'm on my,
Grab that
my
cash.
Wii. My favorite TV show is One Piece. Fuck you and your bitch ass homie.
Fire.
Taking shots!
Fire.
Taking fire! Heading this way.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Sammy T. Dude, are you really
Bounty
NLMB,
target
bro?
is down. Well done.
Are you really NLMB, bro? Ah! Ah!
Got a loadout drop in.
Help! Dude, no, nigga! Ass crack! Papas, you're going way too slow, Daddy. Green, get your punk ass up here.
Enemy UAV overhead.
Fuck them niggas, they behind you, bro. They behind you, fuck them. Bring your one-on-ones, pussy.
You lose, asshole.
Allied cluster strike inbound. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the
Single
skies.
shooter.
Check your fire.
Fuck your axe, get better, bitch. Fuck your axe, get better, bitch.
Cluster strike
Taking
incoming.
fire.
Who's shooting?
Gas is moving.
Thermite out.
It's all up to you now. Go for the win.
Who's shooting? I whacked his ass, he just hacked.
Let's get to the safe zone, people.
Oh, he's hey, right here, back in. Heal up, heal up, heal up, heal up, heal up. I don't got much ammo, bro. Down.
Movement.
Get your bitch ass out the crib. Behind you, behind you, behind you. This guy control B, control B.
Enemy dropping into the AR.
Sit your bitch ass down, boy! Get the fuck out my crib!
To kill me.
Pick this shit over here. And take one of these, hurry up. Sit your bitch ass down, boy!
Got a gas
Hop over that wall, hop over that wall.
Gas is closing. Relocating the safe zone. Fire sale is active. Buy station costs are adjusted.
Takes more than that to kill me.
Feel me? Slow up the pace and I apply a little pressure. Come get this nigga, he's broke.
To the left.
Just listen to me, bro. I was wearing these niggas out, bro.
Turn from the lock. Claiming the property.
Twitch.tv/West. Oh my god, bro. I was wearing them niggas out, bro. I was tearing them niggas a new asshole. Oh my god, that ramp goes crazy, fool. Nobody saw that either, bro.
Yes, you did, monkey. I heard you singing. See you all soon. Goodbye. Goodbye, Mr. Brown. Here's something you already know. Let's begin. There it is. White rabbit. Which goat is white? There it is. White goat. Which dish is white? There it is. White dish. Which flower is white? There it is. White flower. Sensational.
You hear that? Where do you think Monkey is? Hi! Yay! Hi, Monkey! Hi, Hedgehog! We found you! No, we found you!
What's wrong? Is that her?
Grab some target practice while you can. We're deploying soon. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies. You're done warming up. Stand by for deployment to the war zone. Battle Royale. All right, soldier. Mark a drop point for your team. You've got gas closing in fast. Get to the safe zone. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
Sorry, bro. Get my shit.
Get to work.
You can't kill me. I was too close.
Stop running, bitch. Yes, I do.
Hostile maneuvering. Enemy team is tracking your position. Bounty target has been marked. Kill him. Hostile maneuvering. Enemy UAV overhead.
Fuck your aimbot, bitch.
Fire over here. Enemy took that one,
Bro,
but we'll
come
be back
on,
to
you
finish
can't
the
stay
job.
alive, bro.
Target right here.
Enemy dropping into the AO. Check your gear and weapons. Planes are making ready for deployment.